Hello, how you doing out there in TV land? I'm Wendy Sweet. This is Jonathan Davis. You are at our podcast, which is, what's it called again, Jonathan?
Our podcast is active
Wealth. No, passive income, active wealth show. Thank you very much.
We give Bill a hard time about it, and
I know.
we couldn't even do it. And I apologize if anyone hears an echo. I'm in our new office, and all I have is a desk, so it's a little echoey in here.
Yeah, and we're not punishing you. You just haven't gotten all of it in yet, right?
That's right. Yeah.
He hasn't been put in the corner. So we are in a different building. I mean, you can see bricks behind me. We're still unloading and everything, and we did all this over Thanksgiving, kind of at the last minute. We're thrilled that we've done it. But boy, moving an office, I think it's harder than moving a house, don't you?
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, yeah, I would probably liken it to if you're moving houses with 10 children. Like that's probably what it's about like.
Yep, and we've locked ourselves out twice now. Had to call the locksmith, got a key made, and left the key up on the desk and locked ourselves out again.
Yeah. This morning I show up and our account manager, she's waiting in the lobby, and I'm like, "What's going on?" She said, "The door's locked. I can't get in." I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I said, "Didn't someone make keys?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, well, where are they?" She's like, "Upstairs on the desk." That does us no good.
That's right. Well, if we didn't have to work while we were moving, it would be a lot easier, right? But that makes it kind of tough. So you are on our podcast, the Active Income Passive Wealth podcast, and we would love for you to. How do you do that? You like us, you
hit the bell, you subscribe, you share.
Tell all your friends, right?
Yeah.
Please do that, and you can ask questions as well. Easily ask questions over here in the chat box. Be sure to ask questions because we are here to answer them. And later, if you come up with one that you'd like us to address, we are absolutely happy to do that. We know there's a lot of people out there that aren't going to give you the whole truth and nothing but the truth when you're being asked about anything to do with lending, borrowing. We want to get all the ugly stuff out there, so there's no questions. Because if it works well when it's ugly, then it's a deal. That's the way I always look at it. And you need to be prepared for bad things, right, Jonathan? Whoops. You're muted. There you go.
Absolutely. I mean, I know we've touched about on this before. Like when I'm buying rental properties for my personal portfolio, I only buy them if they can still cash flow themselves at 10% interest. And boy, was I glad that I did that when COVID hit. So yes. No one wants to pay 10% interest on a long-term loan, but if you can get the deal right and it can do it, you can weather a black swan event like this that just happened. So if it worked when it was ugly, it's going to sure as heck work when it's pretty.
That's exactly right. So we don't have any news because that's Bill's gig, and Bill is on an airplane. Like as we speak, he's flying. His arms must be tired.
Well, yeah, he's taking one for the team and going to Florida and Texas, right?
Poor guy.
Yeah, poor guy.
Yeah, he's going to Freedom Founders First, which is the mastermind that we've been involved in for maybe 5 years now. That we absolutely love. David Phelps runs that mastermind, and then he's going to leave there on Saturday or Sunday, I believe, and fly to Tampa. Poor guy. And go to the Collective Genius Mastermind there. So, Bill has the toughest job of all of us, I think, don't you?
Yeah, we're left here to, do all the work, and, Bill's, drinking gin and tonics on the plane.
That's right. Well, we're trying to get all the loans in before the end of the year.
Yeah.
That's the key. So we don't have any news for you, but we do have two great questions, and we are ready to ask the first question.
Yep. The first question, Wendy, is what do you do about judgments or liens if you are the lender? So
Ick.
judgment or lien on the property.
Ick. And we've had to deal with that quite a few times on what we do. So in our note, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan, but in our note of recent, we have added a clause that says you have to get written permission from us to be able to add a second lien after our note. Isn't that correct?
Correct. Yeah, you'll see that in ours, and you'll see that in a lot of other lenders. It's it is a default trigger. Most lenders, if you're paying and it's not a crazy combined loan to value ratio, they won't really do anything just because why would they if you're paying? But it is technically a default. If you don't get the lender's written permission to do so, they could call your note due.
That's exactly right. And people do it anyway, though, don't they?
They think they're clever.
but we know. So what that does is the reason why we really don't like notes behind us. There's a couple of things. My first reason is if I have to take the house back, I'd rather do a deed in lieu than have to go through the foreclosure. If there's a second on it, I can't do that. I have to somehow wipe that second out. My other thing is if I have a borrower that feels like they have to get a second in place, it makes me worry about the borrower. And, what's the problem that they have to be in it deeper than we're willing to lend to begin with? What are some of the issues you have about, and we're just talking about just a second. What are your problems with that?
If you go kind of take the, I guess the bank lending model, you really want it to know that if there's a second or a third or whatever it is, because you want an intercreditor agreement signed. Mm-hmm. Because basically, if you're the first lien holder, you want everyone else to say, yes, we know you are the first one. You get paid before everyone, and you want that in writing, just so everyone's in agreement. And if you don't know about them, then you obviously don't have that in writing, and it can just create. Rarely, but it can create issues down the road with, who gets paid first, who gets paid when, how, all those things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The real part of this question, though, is judgments and liens. And what I mean are judgments and liens from the city. Maybe the city's put in out a lien against your property, or a judgment against your property for, they charge you to clean up and cut the grass and knock a house down, those kind of things, or a mechanic lien, where your vendors have not gotten paid for some reason, or maybe they got in an argument with the lead contractor and they felt like they weren't paid what they were supposed to get paid. So they'll put a lien against it. Mm-hmm. When it's a judgment, it could be against the company, which would tag on to every house they own at that point.
In that county.
Right. In that county. That's a good point. That's a really good point. So talk a little bit about judgments and the best way, how they affect you and the best way to handle them.
So, judgments, like Wendy said, they get tagged to the LLC or the, whatever it is, incorporation, and they get recorded at the county level. So when you do that, anything that LLC owns or is a part of in that county gets clouded with that judgment. So you can't sell, you owe $50,000 on a judgment to the city or county, whatever it is, or whoever the contractor is, and on one property, but you have another property that you're getting ready to sell. Well, they recorded it. It's clouding that title now. Now you can't sell it until you pay that $50,000. So, that's the issue. Now, if you only own one property in a county and they file that and all your other properties are in another county, it doesn't affect those unless they file in that other county.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if you're a lender and you're making a loan to a borrower that, of course, they're going to do it under their LLC, they get some sort of judgment filed against them, and they have other houses that you have nothing to do with. And maybe that judgment is because one of those other houses and has nothing to do with the house that you have. It still goes against your house.
Yep.
The one that you have the judgment against or the loan on.
Yep. So you as the lender, you can't get paid back until that judgment's, satisfied.
That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly right. And we've done that dance before, haven't we?
It's not one we enjoy, but yeah, we've done that dance.
It's difficult. We're going through one right now that there is a judgment against a couple of houses that we want to take back. It's actually against the borrower. And
we don't even want to take them back. We just want to help them get sold.
That's exactly right. and we have offers on them all, and we can't even get them sold until those judgments are taken care of. But the ones that the two that we've got sold, we can't close on because the judgment is really based on all of these other houses that they have that we have nothing to do with.
Yep.
And that have nothing to do with these two houses. So it's frustrating. And I mean, currently I'm dealing with the company, a building supply company that put the judgment out there. And the only thing I can do is negotiate a portion of that judgment to be paid out with the sale of that house. And of course, none of the proceeds would go to the borrower. It would go to pay that judgment off. But boy, is it a pain to deal with all of that. And, if the judgments were really, really, really expensive, it could put a real kink in everything you have to do. So how do you wipe them out?
Yeah, so you pay them, or
that's always
file foreclosure. I mean, you can wipe out judgments on properties from material mechanics, stuff like that. You can't wipe out federal judgments, and you can't wipe out state and city judgments. So those, you got to pay those.
Mm-hmm. So when you do go through the foreclosure, you actually can wipe out the judgments. But here's what really happens. Once you, the lender, get all of your funds back, and that can be your principal, any unpaid interest, any late fees, any renewal fees, any attorney charges, what it costs to do the foreclosure, any expenses that you put out as a lender. Once you foreclose, that house is going to go to the courthouse steps to sell. If they don't meet your price as the lender on all of the things that you're owed, then it comes back to you, the lender, and you, the lender, can sell it. But any money over and above what you were owed in the first place, it goes to you. But any money over and above has to go to pay these judgments and liens that were in place. I found that out. Now, if it's a city, state, or federal lien, they're first in line, always first in line, and they'll get their money. They'll get their money. I promise you that. Yeah. So it can get kind of hairy. This is why it's so important to be in a loan at or below that 70% mark that we talk about all the time.
Yep. These things get filed all the time. And just being completely honest, I mean, I can go file a judgment against your LLC that owns properties right now.
Right.
And then, it would be, you'd have to have the burden to prove that that it wasn't valid or whatever. And, to be, every state's a little different on what makes a valid judgment. Most of them on the material mechanics, contractor side, they have to file it within 6 months of being on the site and doing work. If they don't file it within that 6 month period of doing the work, then it's not a valid judgment.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Um, and it happens a lot more than you think it does, with mechanics filing liens against properties. And that's why it's really, really important, if you ever do a deed in lieu, always, always, always pull the title first. You don't
Yep.
know what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, never do a deed in lieu and record it without knowing what's laying there on the title. So always get an updated title report, because yeah, you do a deed in lieu, you just inherited all the problems that were there, if
Yeah.
there are any.
Yeah. And there could be things coming in even after you do that pull, between the time you do that pull and the time you take it back. There are other things that could come up against that property that would fall on you, the person that took it back. So you got to really, really be careful when you do a deed in lieu, and make sure you're covered on that. So,
Mhm.
I hate to say it, but a lot of times foreclosure is your best bet when you're having to take a house back.
Yeah, when you're a lender, I mean, the most sure way to make sure everything's extinguished is through foreclosure action.
Yeah. And it's going to show up on their credit report. It is a matter of public record. So a foreclosure will show up on their credit report, and it'll even show up on the background check.
Oh
It,
yeah.
it's
Hmm.
it's public record, so it's something that will follow them for a very long time. So it's certainly not our first road that we like to take, but when you got to do it, you got to do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, depending on the length of the loan, if you're a lender, I would recommend, down dating, which is just updating title. Every, if you have a 5-year loan, I'd do it every year. If you have a 1-year loan, I would do it probably 3 months or at least a couple months before the maturity date of the loan, just to see what was out there.
Yeah.
Because if you want to extend it, you also want to know what's out there, what's on that title as well. Are you
Yeah.
going to extend a loan that has a second and a third lien stacked up on it now? Or are you going to, demand payment because you've lost confidence in the borrower? It's
And
just something to do.
that's right. And are their taxes paid?
Yeah.
If you have a loan that lasts longer than your original 6 months, 12 months, whatever that loan amount is, or the loan term is, you need to check and make sure the taxes have been paid, because you won't get notified that they haven't been paid as a lender. You don't get notified. Only the person who owns the house gets notified. And it's easy to check. You can get right online and check to see if the taxes have been paid. That's very, 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 very simple. So put that on your calendar and make sure you're checking to see if the taxes are not paid, because if they're not, it can certainly add up, especially if you're in a 5-year loan, right?
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And the government will foreclose on you or sell it in a tax sale quick. That would not be pretty. All right. So we have a second question, and that question is, what are some red flags that you should be aware of if you want to refinance out of hard money? So basically what we're saying is, if you're buying a fix house and you don't want to flip it, you want to do it as a buy and hold, what are some of the red flags that you really need to know about when you want to refinance out of that hard money loan?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's just on the face of it, there's several that pop out. It's like, one's credit score. Can you actually refi out? If it's I guess before we get into this, hard money or private money, in my opinion, is best used for acquisitions, acquisitions and repositioning. So when you take hard money, you acquire a property and you reposition it. Now you have to exit it. So what is your exit plan? It's going to be sell, refi. Your exit plan should never be keep in hard money. It should always be sell or refi. So then we get to the refi section. Are you able to refi? What's your credit score? Most institutions are requiring, 680 plus credit scores to, get at least a 70%, just a rate and term refinance. And then the other piece is the property that you've just acquired and you've repositioned. does the rent comps in the area support the debt service coverage ratio so it can get refied?
Talk a little bit about that debt service cover ratio. Talk about that.
Yeah, in DSCR, and most lenders are looking. There's a few out there that'll do like a 1-to-1 ratio. That means if the payment, the taxes, and the insurance is $1,000, and you make $1,000 in gross income on the property per month, that's a 1-to-1 ratio, 1,000 to 1,000. Most of them require usually around 1.2 debt service coverage ratio. So you should be making 20% more than what you're paying in your interest, your principal, your taxes, and your insurance. So that's what they look at. So yeah, if you get a property and it's, the LTV is fantastic, but the DSCR is 0.9, no one's going to refi it. So right. Rental comps are very important. People buy these properties and they're like, the rents in the area are $850, but I'm going to do a great job and I'm going to get $1,000. No, you're not. No, you're not.
That's exactly right. That, a 2-bedroom's a 2-bedroom, in a certain area, that's all it's going to bring, no matter how nice you do it. Right.
Yeah, you could put. You're going to put granite in there. You're going to put backsplashes. That's great. That's great. But there's, unless you just know someone who's just going to move in and pay that above market rent. Every property manager is going to tell you like, hey, the market rents in this area are $850. We might be able to push it to $895, but you're not going to get $1,000.
Yeah,
so, they are what they are.
That's exactly right. And I know that a lot of people are buying property and wanting to do the buy and hold right now, which is, a great market to be in. There's no doubt about it. But you really need to be sure of your ability to get refinanced out of that. And it really depends on what it is that you plan on doing to that house. Is it going to be a long-term rent? Is it going to be a short-term, like an Airbnb rent, which I like to do a lot? Mm-hmm. Is it going to be a college rent where you can rent it by the room and charge a little bit more because you're renting it by the room to people? All of that is great. But most lenders don't really care that you're doing Airbnb or a college rent. They're going to base it off the market rent, right?
Correct.
So they really, really care what they're looking at it. If we have to take it back from you, what kind of long-term rent can we get for it until we get rid of it?
Yeah, they're not going to Airbnb it. They're going to throw a tenant in there and say, here's a 12-month lease.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. There are other things that can keep a house from refinancing. And it could be, what if it's in a flood zone and you didn't realize it was in a flood zone? A lot of times when you do a fix and flip loan, your lender is not always checking to see if it's in a flood zone.
Yep.
And if it is in a flood zone, that's really going to knock your rent income, because that flood insurance is going to affect that PITI. That's part of the insurance you're having to add in to see if it meets that, if it meets that criteria on what you're doing. Also, how odd is the house? Is it, is it a triplex in the middle of single families? And if it burns down, it can never be rebuilt as a triplex.
No. Like my scenario, I have, two houses on one parcel, and, if each house was parceled up, which they will be soon, but, if they were parceled up, collectively they're worth, probably double than what they are as a duplex comp, because when there's two houses on one parcel, they have to run it as a duplex, and finding comps on duplexes is way more difficult than finding comps on single family homes.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So they're having to use those comps until you get that separated out. And, you have to check with the city first to make sure you can split those two houses on a parcel, because you're going to have so much road frontage for each house to be able to do that.
Yeah, you have to have the correct setbacks. You have to have the correct ingress, egress. You have to have all that. And, you just can't say, hey, I want to split my lot.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. Here's another red flag. How about the borrower's credit score or the money that they have saved in the bank? That
So,
money that they have saved in the bank. Talk about that.
so if they don't have any money saved in the bank,
Well, they're going to have, most lenders are wanting to see 6 months, not only for the house that they're redoing, but for the many other houses that you have. They'll want to see it for your primary too. That you
yeah,
have.
it really depends on what lender you're going with.
Right.
So if you're going with like a credit union or a bank, it's going to be more strictly underwritten. That's where while we like pull background checks and do credit checks. I mean, if as a lender, if their exit is to refinance into a long-term like bank loan or credit union, do they have financial fraud in their background? Do they have a bankruptcy,
Mhm.
2 years ago? Do they have a
Yes.
foreclosure that happened just a year ago? What's back there? And as a lender, you need to know those things because those are red flags. If they're like, yeah, I'm going to refinance. Well, Billy Bob, I see that you have 2 foreclosures 6 months ago. You're not going to refinance.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And they do care about your bank balance, your ability to save money,
Mhm.
your ability to show that you've got enough money to make the payments that are coming up.
Yep.
They also, in some cases, I've seen them care about whether or not you're going to self-manage or have a property management company. And is it your first deal? They care about that too, don't they?
Oh yeah, yeah. We can talk about all the mistakes that we've made. I went to refinance some properties with a credit union, and like a big dummy, I gave them my whole portfolio of properties that I owned, thinking, yeah, they'll refinance me when they see all that I have here. Well, there were several of them that were still in the construction phase or rehab phase, and they weren't income producing. So the bank looked at it and said, yes, we see that this property you want to refinance cash flows well, but we're worried about the other properties that you have that are under rehab right now that aren't producing income. And I was like, why are you worried about those? I'm only refinancing these.
And you had loans in place with the rehab money, right?
Yep. And so they said, we can't do this loan because your global DSCR is not where we need it to be. So just be aware, sometimes people only, banks only need to see maybe what they just need to see.
That's exactly right. I always tell people, only give the information that they're asking for. Don't give them more because it only opens up a new can of worms.
Yep. If I had to do it again, I would just give them those 2 properties and say, here it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what they would look at. So that's really, really, really important. Now it is a little bit easier to get refinanced if you're using what I like to call a quasi private lender or hard money lender rather than your local bank or credit union. You're going to get the best rates from the local bank or credit union by far. But if you're doing this, these quasi hard money kind of companies, you're going to pay a little more in points, and you're going to pay some pretty serious rates. We've seen them down, in the low 6s, but being in the 7s and 8s is not unusual these days, right?
Oh yeah, not at all. We're seeing. I see guys are quoting in the low 5s. I'm not sure I know anyone who's gotten it since March, but yeah, I see them quoting there. That's one of the fun things you get to see as a lender. I see a lot of people quote a lot of low rates. I don't see them close a lot of loans.
No.
But the guys who are quoting those 6, 7, 8 rates on those, they're closing loans.
They sure are.
They are closing them. So it's a gamble. You can chase that low rate for that promise that someone's going to do it, and I'm with you. I hope you get it.
Yeah.
But more often than not, we're seeing them not getting it, and they're coming back with 6, 7% rates, and instead of just going with the guy who does the 7 or 8% rate and getting it done in less than a month, they're going with these other guys chasing these lower rates and getting a very similar rate, and it's wasting 3 or 4 months.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Another red flag that I see when people are worried about getting into a refinance is if they are counting on cash out at that refinance. If they're really counting on that to move forward in their life, to get other things paid off, they're going to have a tough time.
Yeah. If your sole source of income, or I guess I wouldn't even say wealth, but just your money is tied up in equity, and you're banking on a refi to get that equity out. Let me tell you a story of a guy who could probably buy and sell Wendy and I 100 times over, and he owes probably nothing on his house, and the best the bank would give him was a 30% cash out of his house. So it's like if he's only getting that, I mean, they're not willing to give a lot of cash out. So to bank on that is I wouldn't say foolish, but man, you're really gambling.
That's right. We have people coming to us all the time that have, great spreadsheets. Their P&Ls look good. Their equity looks great in what they have, and they want to borrow money against their paid for houses all the time to get cash out. And we immediately, for me, my cheeks tighten up. I'm like, ooh, why do you need cash? Why are you willing to pay 10, 12% to get cash out? What else is going on in your world that you have to come to me to get your money? Right?
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, I've done cash out refinances. I'm not a fan. There are always circumstances that can merit it. Now, in my opinion, I can only put things through the filter, which I have, which are my experiences. And a lot of my experience are cash out isn't always best for the lender.
Right.
That's great. I'm getting this property that somehow you were willing to hand over to pay 12% interest on, or whatever the interest rate is, to get some cash. And now I've just put a lot of cash in your pocket. Something goes wrong, it's really tough to motivate you to get in contact with me.
That's right. Well, especially in this market.
Yeah.
Especially in this market, because you don't know what's happening. You don't know what's going on and what to expect. And, where did all their money go? And what is it that you plan on doing with this money? That's why we like to control the rehab money, right?
That's right. If someone tells me they need cash out because they want to start a new chicken wing enterprise, it's a no.
That's a hard no. That's for sure. So you have spent a wonderful, a little over 30 minutes with us, hearing about these two ugly questions that we've had to answer, and have had pleasure in answering this for you. Anytime that you have any questions for us about loans, we would absolutely, or lending, we'd absolutely love to answer those questions. They don't all have to be ugly, but we want to definitely answer those questions for you. You can ask those questions anytime, even after the show. Please do remember to like, share, subscribe, and I'm not sure what hit the bell means.
Hit the bell.
But we would love to hear from you. Tell your friends about what we're doing here. Our goal is to just share. We want to teach. We want to keep you from stepping in the same holes we've stepped in, right?
Exactly. And go to our website, carolinahardmoney.com. And if you're an investor, you can click the investor tab, which is you want to invest into our fund, you're accredited, or the borrower tab if you would like to submit an application to get pre-qualified for a loan.
That's right. That's right. So thank you so much for spending time with us, folks. Join us next week at the Passive Income Active Wealth Show. We look forward to seeing you again.